Hi all, very good morning and welcome to this demo session on TIBCO BW Training. So today we are going to have a demo session and we are going to see the overview of TIBCO BW and see some basic qualities and see why it is important or why it is a good tool to learn in terms of a professional. So before we start, I would like to mention about MindMajix. I would like to brief you about myself. So I have 7+ years of experience working in this TIBCO domain. So I have been working on TIBCO BW, TIBCO MDM, TIBCO EMS, TIBCO Administrator, and the domain in which I was working is, or I am working is majorly a banking domain, and also I have experience of working in pharmaceutical domain. So I have worked for pharma industry as well as banking industries. So majorly TIBCO BW has a lion's share when it comes to banking domain. So a lot of banks are using TIBCO BW as an integration tool. So I have worked for Cognizant Technology Solutions. I have worked for TIBCO Software, which is the organization which creates this software itself. And I have also worked for Deutsche Bank. And most of these domains were banking domain for me. So what we are going to see in this presentation, in this demo session, is what is TIBCO, what exactly is TIBCO. Then we also need to understand few other things like what is SOA and what is EAI, which comes along with TIBCO. So that if the basics are clear, you will better understand the TIBCO software and the kind of patterns which are being used in both industry standard patterns which are implemented while implementing any business solution. So we are going to see what is TIBCO, what is SOA, what is EAI. So if you know, SOA stands for Service Oriented Architecture, and EA stands for Enterprise Application Integration. So we'll see it now in brief. Also, we are going to cover why TIBCO, why you want to learn TIBCO when there are other softwares available which are integration software as well, and what is the importance of that, and what is the benefit of using TIBCO or learning TIBCO for you guys. So that also we are going to cover in this demo session, and then in the end I will try to introduce you to TIBCO BW, which is TIBCO Business Works tool, and I'll try to give you some overview and introduction on that. So let's start with first point. I'll just open this one. It has the details. So before we see what is TIBCO BW or what is TIBCO Business Works, I would like to explain you what is SOA. So as I said, SOA stands for Service Oriented Architecture, right? So it is nothing, it's not technology, it's not a tool, but it is an architectural style, okay, which is followed in order to achieve some benefits for an organization or for an enterprise. So there are so yeah, first I will try to explain what is the concept of this architecture. So if you see, there is a service consumer. Service consumer is nothing but someone who wants to consume a service from the provider. Okay, provider is someone who is providing the service. Okay, I'll just try to explain the basic concept first before we see what exactly SOA is. I want you to understand what is service consumer, what is service provider, and also what is service. Okay, so service consumer is someone who is going to consume the service. Service provider is someone who is going to provide the service. So now what is service? For we see this, we should see what is service. So service, let's see service in layman's language first. So service means, for example, if we talk in general terms in layman language, so service can be anything like a transportation service, a bus service, right? Some sort of hoteling service, some restaurant, they also provide service. So service is nothing but an entity which fulfills the requirement of the consumer. Consumer is someone who wants to consume the service, who wants the service. So when we see it in this example of, let's say, transportation service, the passenger is the service consumer. The bus service or the aeroplane service, airline service, whichever is providing the service, is called service provider, and the actual transportation is the service. Okay, so I hope this is clear layman language. Now let's see it in technical terms. Okay, so I hope now service consumer and service provider is clear to you. But now here the service we are talking about in terms of software is a software service. It's not a physical service like transportation service, right? So we can define it in this way. Service is a well defined function that does not depend on the state of other services. So service is a function, okay? It fulfills your requirement. Your means the requirements of a consumer, okay, who wants the service. It is something, it's a function which fulfills the requirement of a service consumer, and it is independent of the state of other services. So there can be more than one services. Okay, so what is SOA is what we are seeing right now, but why SOA is used? What is the purpose of using SOA? So SOA has many principles, okay, many different principles. Like for example, when we see, let's say there is some sort of organization, okay, in which the work is being done in batches or in shifts, I would say. Yeah, so let's say there is a shift, say a morning shift of a person starting from 9, let's say 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., and then there is another shift which starts at let's say 4 o'clock, okay, 4 p.m. to 9 p.m., let's say. So let's say person 1 who is working in morning 7 to 3 shift, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. shift, and the next person is working in 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. shift. Now here, let's say person A who is working in the first shift completes his work by 3 p.m. But now when he wants the person B who is coming at 4 p.m., he wants him to, rather he wants to give and handover, right? So that he knows what is the work being done till 3 o'clock, and so that he can resume his work in the second shift from 4 o'clock. But now there is a gap between the shifts, right? First shift ends at 3 and the second shift starts at 4. So there is a gap here. So there is a lot of dependency of person A or for person B on person A, right? So there is a dependency. So we can, I mean, the first one cannot leave without giving a handover to person B who is coming at 4 o'clock. So with this kind of scenarios, we can, I mean, it is called as highly coupled situation. Okay, highly coupled means it is they are coupled together so much highly that there is a dependency that person A cannot leave until person B comes, or person B has to come before person A leaves. So what could be a solution to this? The solution could be that a person A would drop an email before he wants to leave. Okay, before the person A is leaving, he will drop an email so that the handover is given to person B at whatever time he comes. Okay, let's say a person A finishes his work early, he can leave early by sending the email to person B for the handover, and then person B can come in at his own time, right? So in this scenario, what we did is we changed this coupling from highly coupled to loosely coupled. Now there is not much dependency, right? If we are sending an email, there is no dependency for person A to stay until person B comes. So this kind of implementation is using service oriented architecture. So this service, we are coupling them loosely so that there is no interdependency on each other, and one service can be used at many other places, not just one place. Like for example, this is service we are talking about, right? This is one service. Let's say it is in banking domain, the service is to check the balance. Okay, so if you create a service to check the balance, we can use it to only check the balance. Customer can use it to check his balance if he wants to check the balance. But again, let's say he wants to transfer his money. In that case, we can create another service, okay, to transfer the money, in which first we will check the balance, then we will use our second service, which is transfer money. So again, if you see this in detail, the service 1 is to check the balance and service 2 is to transfer the money. Okay, so now if you see, service 1 and service 2 are loosely coupled, they are independent of each other, and service 1 is reusable. It can be reused at many places, right? Like we use it only to check the balance, also we can use it while transferring the money. We want to check the balance first, because if we don't have the money in the account, we don't want a transfer to be successful, we want to fail it, so we want to put that check in. So in this way we can reuse the service. So service oriented architecture is very much used in TIBCO BW, since TIBCO BW is a middleware. And these days all the enterprises, all the organizations, they are following these standards because they don't want to develop one service just to check the balance and then another service to check the balance and transfer money together. No, they want to use single service at many different places. So these services are independent and loosely coupled. Okay, so I hope this is clear. So when we talk about service oriented architecture, it is nothing but a style of designing your software, style of implementing some architecture, a way of defining your system. So if you see this SOA, when it is implemented, it can, so web service is an implementation of SOA. Okay, we also call it as SOA, which is again service oriented architecture. So web service is an implementation of, so web service, if you don't know what is web service, we will see it in detail, don't worry about that. So using TIBCO BW, we can design and develop web services. Okay, we can create our own web services. We can also consume the web services using TIBCO BW. and can create different types of web services like SOAP web services there, REST web services there. Don't worry if you don't know these terminologies, because we'll be seeing them in detail. But in this session, I want to give you an overview to understand what is TIBCO, what is the need of TIBCO, why TIBCO is being used, okay, and what is the importance of it in an organization or in an enterprise. Okay, so before going to TIBCO, I wanted to explain this part, like what is SOA. So I hope this is clear to everybody, service oriented architecture. So let's move on to see what is TIBCO now. Okay, so when you say TIBCO, TIBCO is not a software. Okay, TIBCO is name of an organization. So TIBCO Software Inc. It is the full name. TIBCO Software Inc. is a global software company which provides business integration softwares to integrate, manage, and monitor enterprise applications and information delivery. Okay. So again, I will explain you the terms in detail from this definition itself, each term one by one, so that it's clear to you. So TIBCO software, you must have heard the long form of TIBCO is the Information Bus Company. You must have heard it during your college days in the syllabus. So TIBCO is name of a software company, and they produce or they provide these softwares. Okay, and they just don't provide TIBCO BW. There are many softwares provided by TIBCO, like TIBCO BW is there, TIBCO MDM is there, TIBCO EBX is there, TIBCO Data Virtualization is there, TIBCO Cloud related softwares are there, TIBCO EMS is there, TIBCO Administrator is there. So there are many softwares in different domains. Okay, and but in this demo, what we are going to see or what we are going to understand is what is TIBCO BW. So this is mainly for TIBCO BW. But yeah, before going to TIBCO BW, I want you to understand that TIBCO is not a software, but TIBCO is the name of the company, and they produce their own softwares, and the name of the softwares are like TIBCO BW, TIBCO MDM. The name starts with TIBCO, and then the actual purpose of the meaningful name for the software. Okay, it's clubbed with the name of the company. So TIBCO, as I said earlier, TIBCO is extensively used in banking domain, telecom domain, and airline domain. Even other than these domains, it is also used. Even the Mercedes is the customer of TIBCO. Okay, TIBCO, and there are many other good brands or good organizations are using TIBCO in their system somewhere. Okay, so TIBCO is what you say, yeah, it's majorly used in TIBCO in banking domain. Okay, like because almost if you go to some bank, you will definitely find TIBCO somewhere in a bank. Okay, because it is, there is so much of dependency for banks or even telecom domain to use some sort of software which is a middleware which is used for integration. So now coming to TIBCO BW. So what we saw here is TIBCO, what is TIBCO, which is name of the company, and TIBCO BW is name of a software. So the long form of this is BW is Business Works. Okay, TIBCO Business Works. So this is an EAI product. Now, what is EAI? Okay, what is EAI? EAI stands for Enterprise Application Integration. So before going to see what is enterprise application integration, I would like to give you some example or some analogy which will explain what is an integration. So let's say you started some organization and you want, it is for real estate, let's say, and you started it from, let's say, China. Okay, so in China you have some local guy who is working for you and who is helping people to, let's say we started from India, it will be easier to understand. So let's say we are starting this business from India, and you have some local guy or you yourself are working on this, and you are providing the homes to the people on, say, rent basis or whatever. So it's kind of a real estate agency. And so when you talk to, let me open the next slide. Yeah, so let's, so when you talk to people who are in India for this purpose, so yeah, let's say you're talking in Hindi or whatever your local language. Okay, and you are talking to them and but then you want to expand your business. You have your friend is, let's say, in Spain, and he knows Spanish and he talks and in Spanish with the local people, and he helps them there also. Similarly, you want to establish in China, and in China you again start independent branch of yours where some Chinese guys work for you, he is speaking Chinese. But now you want to make your organization an enterprise, so you want to club all this together and you want to handle it from one place so that you have all the information available. With also, let's say there is a person in India who want to buy a house in China, so you want this kind of request also to be fulfilled. So now problem here is the Hindi guy cannot speak with Spanish because he doesn't know Spanish. Spanish guy cannot speak with Chinese because he doesn't know Chinese. I mean, he might not know. He might know, but there are rare chances that he knows, right? A Hindi guy does not know Chinese, or a Chinese guy does not know Hindi. So here comes the role of a translator. So translator is something which will help you understand the language of Chinese guy, and it will help the Chinese guy understand the language of the guy, right? So in this way it will help to communicate, right? Even when this system and this system is independent or different, right? So I tried to use different shapes here so that you understand these are heterogeneous systems, right? Heterogeneous meaning they are different from each other in any specific way, in terms of their language, in terms of the food they eat, or whatever. Okay, so like, so in that case you want to use, you must have someone like a translator who can help you translate the language into some other, let's say some English. Let's say he converts Hindi to English, and then he converts English to Chinese. Okay, so why I'm saying English, because this system is in the middle of all these systems, right? Spanish, Chinese, and Hindi, it's in the translator is in the middle, so it is called as middleware. That is where the term middleware comes from. So it is something which is used to integrate all other systems together, which are heterogeneous, okay, which are heterogeneous and different from each other. But when you have a middleware like this, it becomes easier to understand and it becomes possible to communicate, correct? So this is the concept of middleware. So I tried to explain you using an analogy and give a simple example, so that when we now go to the next slide and see the applications in terms of computer science, it will be easier to understand. Okay, so going to the next slide, now I'll try to explain the same thing but in terms of computer science. Okay, so let's say there is an application 1, application 2, application 3, application 4 in an organization. Okay, so generally what happens when organization starts, they don't have a lot of applications, right? They start from something small. So let's say they started with some application, some front-end application using Java. Okay, and later on they found some requirement to introduce some legacy systems like mainframe in their organization to fulfill the requirements. So they introduced another application, they bought it from some vendor, and they got mainframe in their applications. Similarly, there is another application called Python. There is another application, developed in Python. Another application called F4, developed in Oracle, okay, or provided by Oracle. So different vendors have provided different applications. So now, if you see why I explained you this earlier analogy, if you see here, even the languages or the technology is different here. So these are the heterogeneous systems, right? So heterogeneous systems can be different from each other in different ways. Like in terms of technology, they can be different. So application 1, application 2, application 3, application 4, all are different technology. This is Java, this is mainframe, this is Python, this is Oracle, right? So they are different technologies. But now challenge is for them to communicate, right? So for which we are using middleware. Correct. Also, heterogeneous system can be different in terms of data format. Like in Java, we give JSON as an input, and let's say the output is also JSON or something else. But whereas when we go to mainframe system, the let's say the input is XML, output is something else, right? It can be different. And when you you want app1 to communicate with app3, here the data format is JSON, but here the required data format is XML. So you cannot directly give this JSON to app3, right? When you want them to communicate, so you have to go via your TIBCO software, TIBCO Business Works, which is used for enterprise application integration. So this is an enterprise entire thing, like all the application 1, 2, 3, 4 are part of my enterprise. So there can be more than this, but let's say this is small scale enterprise and we have 4 applications. So this is an example. So this is called an enterprise. Okay, then these are the applications 1, f2, f3, f4 are the application, different applications which are heterogeneous in nature, and they are different in terms of technology. They can be different in terms of data format. Also they can be different in terms of communication mechanism. For communication, let's this Java application uses web service. Okay, it communicates over HTTP or HTTPS, whereas the Python application, this one communicates over JMS. If you don't know JMS, it stands for Java Messaging Service. It's a very well known messaging service which can be used for communication purpose. Okay, it's a bus. So so again, here's the problem, right? It is communicating over web service, whereas it is communicating over JMS. So that's why we introduce EAI, Enterprise Application Integration. So we are integrating all these application using TIBCO BW. So this is the middleware, right? TIBCO BW. So it stands here in the middle of all the applications. And when I explained you SOA, right? SOA, so it follows SOA. Why I said it follows SOA? Because SOA has many principles on which it works. Like loosely coupled is one of the principles. The applications are loosely coupled is one of the principles. Also, it uses some standard protocols, many different protocols which are standard, let's say SOAP or something like that. So it uses standard protocol so that when it gets the data in different in JSON format or web service, it can convert it to some standard data format and pass it over some standard communication mechanism, which is called as ESB, Enterprise Service Bus. The communication mechanism which is used in TIBCO BW as a standard communication mechanism is called ESB, and then it can convert it to again to the required format, which is XML over JMS, right? So this is the use of TIBCO BW. So I wanted to explain this concept of enterprise application integration so that you can better understand what is TIBCO BW, what is the purpose of TIBCO BW, and where exactly does it stand. So I hope this is clear to you now. Now I want to see why TIBCO. Okay. I mean, there are many other applications other than TIBCO which are used for application integration. And then, but then why you want to learn TIBCO, or why you want to work in TIBCO BW only, and why not other ones? So if you see, TIBCO is a niche skill, and it is one of the best products in integration domain. So as I said, in the banking domain, there are many banks who are using TIBCO BW as a middleware in their system. Okay. Also, it is a niche skill. What does niche skill mean is, let's consider as an example. Okay, just an example. For example, there are Java developers and there are TIBCO developers. So when you compare the number, there are so many Java developers who are there in the market. But when you see TIBCO developers, the number is comparatively very small. So that's how it becomes niche skill, that the resources available in the market for this specific technology or this specific tool is very less, okay, when compared to other technologies or other tools. So that's why it becomes a niche skill. And the in terms of salary or the pay which is given to TIBCO developer will definitely be more, because it's a niche skill and you get lot of opportunities, and lot of good opportunities, I would say, in terms of pay and even the other options like the organizations for which you are going to work. Yeah, and I forgot to mention TIBCO BW is a zero coding tool. Okay, even though we are doing a lot of things using TIBCO BW, you can do it in TIBCO BW using, I mean, you don't need to code anything. Okay, there is zero lines of code which you need to write to do all these things. So it can be done using simple drag and drop, and you just need to understand the concepts clearly, and you need to understand which palette or which activity can be used at what place. So when you see, or when you know what is TIBCO, where it is used, you will better understand those things in the coming sessions which we are going to see. I will explain you each and every activity in detail so that you understand. I mean, as soon as you get a business scenario, you should be able to figure out like which activity you want to use and how you want to implement this solution in TIBCO BW so that the business requirement is met. Okay. So TIBCO is a giant in integration field. As I said, it's power to connect to anything and everything. So it can connect to anything and everything. Anything and everything meaning, when we come back to this slide again, if you see, we can connect to Java application, we can connect to mainframe application, we can connect to Python, we can connect to Oracle, we can connect to database, we can connect to it. TIBCO BW can connect almost anything and everything. Okay, so that is also one of the major reasons why it has so much demand in market. Okay, so since I have worked for TIBCO software itself, I already know the importance or what is the success of this software for the company. Okay, so TIBCO BW is like it's a bread and butter for TIBCO. Okay, for TIBCO software. So they get almost like there's a lot of revenue which is generated using with the help of TIBCO BW for TIBCO. So as I said, it's one of the most successful software products for TIBCO till now. And it has a vast number of activities. Rather, I would use activities word here, which are unique and powerful in itself, or products also you can say. In TIBCO BW, there are many things. Even when there is no compatibility, you can even write the Java code so that you can customize the activity. Okay, it is generally not required, but in the business scenario where you don't have, the TIBCO hasn't provided that kind of activity to you so that you can connect from one system to another system. In that case, you can customize it on your own, so that option is also there. So why I'm trying to tell you this is because there is no limitation, right? Because you can write your own code and you can implement it. So there is no limitation that it cannot work here, because you can use the custom activity and you can make it work in your organization. So that is also the one of the reasons why it is being used by, or why it is being preferred by the organizations or enterprises. Then the major use is in telecom and banking domain. So as I said earlier, its major use is in telecom and banking domain. Also, there are many other domains in which TIBCO is being used. I also gave you the example of Mercedes, but these are the ones in which you will 90% you will find that TIBCO is being used here in the telecom or in the banking. In the other domains, it's also there, but comparatively the percentage is lesser. Here I tried to explain you why TIBCO, why you want to learn TIBCO. So since this tool is such a powerful tool which has a lot of demand and it's already being used in many organizations, it is a good tool to learn and it's good tool to explore. Also, when you want to learn it, it's not, once you understand the concepts clearly, because see, I could have explained you what is TIBCO, or I could have started directly with TIBCO BW, but I wanted to explain you what is SOA, what is enterprise application integration, what is a service, okay, what is an enterprise, what is the integration. So now you know where exactly TIBCO stands. I mean, if I directly start with something, open the software and show you the process, that really won't help you if you are new to TIBCO. If you already know, then that is fine, but otherwise if you are new to this, you must understand all the basic concepts. So if basic concepts are clear, it is very easy to learn this software, which you will see in our upcoming sessions, in the training sessions. Okay, and again I will try to explain you all the concepts first and then show you the actual implementation, how it can be done using TIBCO BW, and also will make you work on some lab sessions so that you also have some hands-on and you can do it whenever you want to do on your own. So going to the next slide, TIBCO overview. So here I will so this is the definition of TIBCO business works. Okay, TIBCO business works is scalable, extensible and easy to use integration platform that allows you to develop integration projects. So now I hope you understand the meaning of this definition, because I already explained what is integration, right? What is TIBCO business work. So it is a software, it's a platform that allows you to develop integration projects. Also, this TIBCO BW has kind of three parts, we can say. It's a TIBCO BW uses TIBCO Designer. Okay, TIBCO Designer is used to design the project or develop the project. Once it is developed, so it uses GUI for defining business processes and an engine that executes the process. So using the designer, which I will show you in the next slides, I'll show you some snapshots where I'll explain you the basics or the overview of these things. So the designer is used to develop the process, okay, and an engine, once the process is developed and once the archive is created, you can TIBCO BW has its own engine, okay, which is used to execute these processes. So as I said, there are three parts. The first part is TIBCO Business Works Designer, okay, which is a graphical user interface, which is zero coding interface using which you can develop a business process to fulfill the business requirement. Okay. Next step is, or the next part is the engine, TIBCO BW engine, that executes the the process which you have developed. Okay, so it is called as process definition, but don't worry about that at this point of time. We'll see it later. So that in the second, just understand the parts of TIBCO. Okay, TIBCO BW. So designer, then the TIBCO engine that executes the process, and third part is TIBCO administrator. So once the process is executed and it is deployed and executed, you can manage it using again a web-based GUI, web-based graphical user interface. So using this web-based GUI, you can see the running applications, okay, and you can manage them, you can start them, you can stop them, you can change many configurations as per the business need, which we will definitely see in detail at later point of time. But at this stage, I just wanted to explain you there are three different parts. One is the designer, the other one is the engine which executes the process, and the third is TIBCO administrator, which using which you can manage the runtime applications. So first part, I'll try to explain. Okay, this is the I would say most of the TIBCO developers will be using this TIBCO Designer, okay, as major part of their work. Okay, because you need to design and develop the processes, and deployment and all is, it depends on the project again, but generally it is handled by some other teams. But yeah, anyway, we are going to see everything starting from the development until the deployment and monitoring. But most of the times you will be working on a TIBCO Designer, so it is important to understand this part in very much details. Okay, so there are different parts or different yeah, I would say the panels which are named in TIBCO Designer. So I will show you the image directly so that you can understand what I'm trying to explain. So in the TIBCO Designer, this first bar where you see project, this is TIBCO Designer. Okay, once you open it, it will be empty, but this is some business process which is created. Don't worry about the business process. Just understand what part is called what panel is called what is the name of the panel. Okay. This is the menu bar in which you see different options here like project, edit, view, whatever. Next is the toolbar. Okay, don't worry about the details of this as of now, but just understand what is toolbar, what is menu bar, so that when I say go to the toolbar and click on select the transition, okay, you should be able to understand, yeah, this is the toolbar, I need to go here. Then this panel is called as project panel. So why it is called as project panel? Because you can see here there is a complete hierarchy of the project which can be seen here, and you can see the processes, different connections you have, different configurations you have made in your project. So these all are listed here, and you can expand and contract these ones, and you can see it here. Okay, next panel is called palette panel. So before we see palette panel, I want you to understand what is palette. Palette is nothing but it's kind of a grouping. Okay, so let's say you want to use some Java activities. So these different icons are called activities. Just understand that it is called activities. Other details we'll see later. So to get a Java activity, you can simply click here and drag and drop it here so that it can be used, and you need to do some configuration changes in that, and then it can be used, okay, in the business process. So Java is one of the palettes. So palette is nothing but a grouping so that you can easily access those activities from there. So if you want to use Java activity, you can go to Java palette, and you can use the activity and drag and drop the activity and use it in your business process. Okay, then this panel is called as design panel. Okay, so in this you are designing your business process, that's why it's called design panel. And this one is the configuration panel, because you do the configurations here. So for example, you want to connect to some system, let's say to some JMS connection is there, you will provide the host and port, those kind of configurations you'll be mentioning in this panel. That's why it's called configuration panel. So these are the different panels and toolbars which are there in the TIBCO Designer. So these are the uh, this is a basic overview of that. Okay, going back to our original presentation, the scope of the demo was this, and I think I have explained you the overview and introduction of these five TIBCO and all these topics. So I would also like to show you some sort of so I have screenshots as of now. I cannot open the software here, so that's why I have the screenshot. So okay, let me open this. Okay, let it be. So if you see here, we have designer. In this I have designed some process. This is a simple process as your JSON. So if you remember, I explained you the heterogeneous systems are there, right? So let's say there is one system which uses JSON and there is a system which uses XML, and you want to convert it from JSON to XML before passing it from application 1 to application 3. Okay, so in that case, what could be the possible implementation in TIBCO BW? So in TIBCO BW, as I said, the start and stop, I won't go into the details now, but just I'm trying to explain you how a business scenario can be handled practically using TIBCO BW. So I will use the activity called pass JSON activity. In this, I will do some configuration. Okay, and in the process, I will pass the JSON string. Okay, which is coming as output from application one, and I will pass that JSON and I will convert it to into an XML. So in the end, if you see the output of this activity, you will get XML string. Then that XML string you can directly pass to your application 3. So this is how an implementation can be done for this kind of business scenario. So this is very simple scenario, but at this stage, just to understand like what is the purpose or what is the use or how TIBCO BW can practically be implemented or used in this kind of scenarios. So this is a small example for you to understand. Okay, anyway, we'll see all these in detail later in the training sessions, but for now you can have an idea of this. Okay, so coming back to this, go to the next slide now. So in this course, what all topics will be covered? So you can see all these topics, and these all topics have a lot of subtopics. It could not be covered in this slide, so that's why I just added the main topics. I will just quickly show you the topics which will be covered, which also you can see on the website of MindMajix and see here. So you have all the details here, and there are introduction to TIBCO business work, then all the things. Okay, what is the domain, TIBCO domain, what is domain security, what is domain monitoring, groups and transition, process design. So there are a lot of topics. Okay, I won't go into details as of now, but there is, I mean, almost each and everything will be covered. Okay, also there will be practice test and interview questions. Okay, provided. Also there will be a lot of material provided to you so that you can study on your own and try to practice on your own to get a better grip on this. Then there will be some add-on topics like corporate level standards you'll be getting what is the future of TIBCO BW, what are the career opportunities for you as an individual. Okay, I mean, what is your current experience, where exactly you're working, what are your expectations based upon that, and there are many others. Okay, based upon your interest. So I'll go to next slide now. So additional course resources, yeah, so there will be some product documentation provided to you in which you will be able to see all the details which I'm going to explain you in the training sessions, and you will see all the required information in one place. So I will provide you this complete package of the documentation where you will have each and everything whenever you want to refer to it. Okay, I mean, whenever you want to do it on your own, you can do it. Otherwise, I am always there for you to solve your doubts. And then there will be some projects we'll be discussing. Okay, so I just mentioned just two projects as of now, but we can see it in detail later on. So since these are the domains which I have worked in, and also these are the major domains where BW is used, so I will be covering some simple projects in these which you will be able to understand, and you will be able to explain it to someone else if required. Okay, some banking domain project we'll see, and some pharmaceutical domain project we'll see. And then this is the lab setup. When you want to attend this session, you should have high speed internet so that you do not lose any content. Okay, because each and everything is very important when you want to understand the things in very much details. Okay, you should have a desktop or a laptop, that is must. You cannot do it from mobile because when there are lab sessions and all, you won't be able to do it. So you should have a laptop or desktop. If you have mobile only, then in that case you will be able to just see the presentation but not do it on your own. So also you should have Windows 7 or above, 500 GB of hard disk. Okay, minimum requirement these are. Then the memory should be 16 GB, and CPU should be 4 core. So this is not hard and fast, but yeah, the better the configuration, better the software will run. Okay, so mock interviews. Yeah. So after the completion of this course, I will be conducting mock interviews for all the participants who want to evaluate themselves. Okay, before applying for a job, so that they are sure that whenever they are going for a job interview, they will be confident enough to crack it. So that I will take responsibility of. So and then yeah, also there are certain certifications, and I will explain you all these details later on, once we complete the course and learn on the technicalities, so I will explain you what all certificates you can do, what all are the certificates which have value in the market, and what is the importance of these certificates when you are looking for a job or when you are switching your job. Okay, so we will see this in detail in the course, and I will explain you how, also I'll tell you the the material from where you can get it to study for these certificates and to crack them. So thank you very much. Thanks for attending the demo, and I hope everyone understood the concepts, at least the basic concepts, so that you can go ahead with the actual course content when we start it. Okay, so thank you.